We have discussion where we bring in the experts talking all about how our internet, how social media impact the mental health and behavior of young people, and what you need to know as parents when you're engaging or your children are introducing your family to the digital world. We want to remind you that everything you do online stays, mostly everything, and therefore it is important that we understand that, as we said before in one of our sessions, to prioritize digital readiness for our children above digital happiness. I want to start off first by saying thank you to all those who attended the parenting webinar we had over the weekend. If you did not see it, you missed something tremendous, but we still have your back. If you go to youtube.com/EKCO Nation, Echo Nation on YouTube, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the channel. You will have the webinar there. Where we had our experts talking all about digital privacy and safety, and we took some of the questions from those who attended the webinar. So if you want to see that webinar once again, you can go on to our YouTube page. The information is there. You can check it out and you'll see all the information, as well as if you miss any of our parenting shows, all of our shows are also streaming live on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/EKCO Nation. You can also join the Echo Nation WhatsApp channel. That you could use our number 254-3526 to join the channel. We have several things happening over the summer. Yes, we have another webinar coming up, and we also have the Echo Nation Resilient Youth Camp coming off July 14th to 25th. Make sure to go and register and apply to have your child join that summer camp. The ages 12 to 17, and it's only $150. That includes lunch for all 2 weeks. So we provide lunch for the 2 weeks. We provide materials. We provide free transportation to all the activities and so on. So make sure if you want something very engaging and informative for your child, and exciting as well for your child over the summer, check out the Echo Nation Resilient Summer Camp, and it's coming off July 14th to 25th. All right, WhatsApp us 254-3526 if you need more information. Now, today we are going to be talking about digital addiction. And digital addiction, if you do not know, is when we cannot function, in layman's terms, when we can't function without our devices, or when the things that we do in normal life becomes impacted by our need to interact with screens. All right. And today we have a very special guest joining with us. She is, let me make sure I have all of the terms correctly. As she says, she's not a doctor, but I want to welcome Mrs. Terry Best-Thompson. She is a social worker and counseling psychologist, and she's the counseling coordinator at Parados. Good evening, Terry. How are you doing?
Good evening. Good evening. I'm fine, thank you. And it's Miss Terry Best.
Miss Terry. Okay.
Yes,
I'm very sorry. I will call you
doctor.
doctor.
Me today.
Yes, I call you doctor before. No, I'll call you. All right. So it's great to have you here. Talking about this. You have a bachelor's in social work and a master's in counseling psychology, and I understand that you're one of the parenting counseling specialists with Parados.
Thank you. I think I am. I know I am. We are definitely parent education for development in Barbados.
And I want to say a shout out to all those at Parados. We know that Parados and Echo Nation, we've been working together for years on this aspect of parenting and parenting in the digital world. So I want to start off, Terry, and talking about digital addiction. I want to start off with an article that I have here on Ynet News. And it's an article based on a doctor called, someone who's responsible for research and development at the Attention Revolution Initiative, Shavath Trethel, and she's an Israeli researcher, and she says early and prolonged exposure to screens interferes with how the brain develops. Tritel explained in an interview with Ynet, from ages 0 to 6, a child's brain is extremely sensitive. The way it learns to process the world is through sensory input: touch, movement, sound, eye contact, facial expressions. Screens provide artificial stimulation that floods the brain and doesn't allow it to develop the capacity to tolerate boredom or process subtle cues. Now, I want to start off here with the aspect of early childhood development. You mentioned the ages between 0 to 6, where the child's brain is extremely sensitive. How, from your perspective and what you've in your aspect of parenting and working with children and so on, is this research true in terms of how early childhood development being impacted by screens?
It most certainly is relevant, because during that age, 0 to 8 years, is when children learn the most. That is when they develop a sense of self, a sense of who they are. And like the article said, the digital world is artificial. Those colors are unrealistic. I've never seen pink so pink yet until I started watching cartoons for children. So those things are unrealistic, and they're fun, and it's continuous. So children learn that there's this continuous activity, and that's not reality. There is downtime. So then they learn that there's something to always do, and when it's time for downtime, they don't know what to do with themselves.
So you mentioned the whole aspect of color and how that is impacting the child's brain. How does that color, and it's not only just the color, I suspect the quick transitions that you're seeing a lot now with cartoons and even the short videos. So everything is short, everything is quick transitions, this bright color and energy. How is that impacting the whole, as they mentioned, the stimulus to the brain and what children now expect when coming into these environments?
And the challenge with that is only the sensory that is affected. It's only the hearing and the sight. The sense of touch is just them being able to control the environment, and it's an unrealistic environment. So the reality is children become addicted to something that is not real. They become addicted to colors and singing. There's no singing throughout every day in our adult lives, or when they're at school, probably at praise and probably at church. But that singing and that tone impacts on them. You would hear many of our children in the primary school have a TV at site. You would hear, you grew up in Barbados, you born in Barbados, and be like, no, it's Bajans, but they sing English or they sing American. That is the digital world teaching them what is expected of them.
Like
They're
Peppa
learning.
Pig.
Like Peppa Pig. We have a lot of people. I like Peppa Pig. Let's not go there.
Yes,
it's a great opportunity to teach children what not to do. And that's the most important thing. A lot of times that our children are using digital technology, they're not always supervised. They not always have a time frame on when they can do it and how they should do it. So those are some of the challenges that are also encountered. And we see children as young as 2 years old know how to operate phones and tablets and everything better than some adults, better than the grandparents.
Yeah. And that's actually true. We talk about that in EKCO Nation. The whole aspect of these children are digital natives, and it's like if they are born with a sixth sense of how to operate digital devices. I'm going to still stick where we're talking about now. One of the things that I recognize, especially with how children are early on devices, is the whole idea of you mentioned it as well, the constant access to stimuli. In other words, it is constant, it is there. We know when we said about digital addiction, it is a behavioral addiction, and the challenges that a lot of doctors recognize with it is like, unlike for say drugs, where there's a barrier for entry, there's usually you gotta go and purchase it and everything. With the whole aspect of digital addiction, and especially with children that have access to these devices from very young ages, there is no barrier. There seems to be a constant flood, a constant stream, constant access to this. And how is that now impacting now? We talked about the brain, but how is that impacting now the temperament of the child and the expectations of the child to be constantly stimulated? And does that now have like other adverse behaviors coming out of that?
Most certainly, because it impacts on socialization. When they're not learning to interact with other people, with other children, making the eye contact, like the article say, learning to see when someone is happy or someone is sad, learning through all those interactions what is expected of them. It obviously impacts on social interaction. So when you take that child out of its digital world and you take it to a social event, it can't function. It can't play with other children. And we know from experience that children are friendly. So children make friends with other children and other adults quickly. But if they're attached or addicted to technology, you find that when they get there, that's all they want. And if parents use it as a bargaining chip, if they feel overwhelmed, if they feel like they don't know what to do, and they give in to their demands, it just fuels the fact that I can have it whenever I want it. So it definitely impacts on social relationships and the ability to regulate emotions, because they're so addicted to it. They're going to cry for it. They're going to be frustrated. And children don't have a sense of time. So they could cry for an hour, and if you give them in that hour, they're learning next time if they cry for 2 hours, I'm going to get it. I just have to cry a little longer. So then we have to teach them now how to regulate their emotions. The barrier you mentioned, the barrier is parental control.
Correct.
The barrier is taking that device.
Or in some cases, I know so many doctors and psychologists are recommending now that children should not have access to devices till after the age of 2, and then after that you must have that level of regulation and so on, because as you mentioned, the challenges in terms of the expression, they don't know how to see or interpret certain expressions. So even in terms of watching TV, they're encouraging parents to watch TV with your children, and so that they could see your expressions, see how you feel about certain things and what they're seeing, and it becomes a social interaction and not a one-on-one thing. Is that what you are seeing as
Most
well?
definitely, because while you have your children watching the technology and digital things and you're not paying attention, that device, whatever they're watching, is teaching them the values. Do your values coincide with the values of the things that they're watching? When Peppa Pig throwing tantrums and calling children names, is that your value? Or do you now have to come in and say, no, that's not how we behave in this household. Peppa Pig is naughty. And you show them the expression. So if it becomes a device where children are unattended and you're not watching, then it interacts and it interferes with the values and the discipline that you want to give to your children.
All right, so another thing that was said in terms of early childhood and children being on devices for long periods of time is that they obviously are developing brain. Children are losing what people call their pincher strength, where because they're accustomed to the swiping and just touching buttons and swiping and so on, what you would call the sensory stuff in terms of motion, or the pincher strength, the ability to hold a pencil, to tie their shoelaces, to button a shirt, and those type of things are actually being hampered. And I've heard of some cases where it is actually painful for some of these children to do this. Is this what we are seeing? Is this something that is relevant to what we're seeing today?
I do believe it's relevant, and it can be true. I have not seen it personally. I do believe Paradox also has a daycare, and I know that they're finding creative ways to help the children build those triumphs, like even pinching a clothespin. So there are different things that parents are utilizing, because as bad as technology could be, it can be good as well if you're using it to research and to learn and to gain knowledge.
But at that age, but
that's what I'm saying. The parents now have to put those things in place. So when you're, instead of letting them watch, I can't even Coco Melon all day long, which is bright colors and lots of singing, you show them different things that can teach them as well. And that way, while they're learning, you say you have to pinch that, because children take away a lot of these things that they watch from as early as 2 years. You were hearing them singing these songs that they're watching, so they're learning from it. So the reality is parents have to take the control, because like you say, at 2 years old, all they want to do is swipe. At a year and a half, all they want to do is play with that technology. It can affect them wanting to eat. It can affect them wanting to sleep. It is just something to keep their minds engaged, and it is catered for that. Basically, the persons that create the programs create it to cater to children, so they will want to stay logged on, and children don't know what is best for them.
Understood. No, as you were saying that people do it intentionally. I think one of the things that people forget is that most marketing and advertisers, I remember someone said that you don't put the prettiest cereal box at the top of the shelf. You put it at the bottom where the child could see, where the child would nag the parent for what they want. So in the same way, we have a situation where these marketers are using the same strategy. They say, well, if I have a child that's addicted, that child will nag the parent to get what I am selling that child. So I think parents need to understand that all of this in terms of marketing and so on, and that manipulating of early brain development of our children, we cannot be comfortable with that, and we need to take that level of control. Now, I want to ask this next question. What are some of the signs? Someone might be listening and they give the children a tablet or a phone or whatever, and they're asking, what are some of the signs that my child may have a challenge with screens and monitoring and time and so on?
If you find that your child cannot function when you take away the device, I mean for extended period of times, you may have a challenge. If you find that your child becomes irritable and frustrated and angry when you take away the device for extended period of time, you may have a challenge. If you find that your child sneaks behind your back and find that device and goes into a corner and hide where you can't find them, you may have a problem. If your child does not have a social life or other activities to engage them, him or her, you may have a problem. So there is excessive use and there is addiction. And the addiction comes because of excessive use. The article you read before talked about it does not give children the time to be bored.
Right.
Boredom gives children time to be creative. That's when they get to develop their analytical skills, what they can and cannot do. And with the technology, it prevents you from doing that. When we were bored, we used to play games. It enhanced name, animal, person, place, and thing. It enhanced your vocabulary. You play I see, I spy. Right. But children no longer have those opportunities because they're plugged in.
I like where you're going, because that is one of the things that persons are very concerned about in terms of not only children being on devices so early, but also creating a dependency on things like AI and so on, where there's a loss of the creative side of children. And usually you're talking about children imagining, even having imaginary friends, and all this thing was commonplace when we were growing up. And we would take the cushions from the chairs and we would build house and play house and build things and do all sorts of things. That whole creativity, imagination now is being replaced by this constant access to entertainment. So is that something that we're seeing? No, I don't know if we may see it in the creative writing skills, or as you say, where children don't have a device, they just think that the only thing they can do now is sleep or throw a tantrum. But is that what we're seeing, a decline in the creativity and the imaginative ability of children today?
I would want to say a positive yes without research, because again, if you do not read, if you do not experience life, it impacts on your creativity. And for me personally, you will see children so preoccupied they can't even tell a story anymore on their own, even though that movies and things should help. You find that they can't tell a story. It impacts on composition skills. So it definitely has the potential to be harmful academically and with person success. What I would say though is that I don't want to say you cannot give the child the device. It's that you have to monitor. You can use it as an incentive. Let's do all of your work, and so that children have a balance between academics, they have a balance between a social life, and they have a balance between play. When you guys call and say, oh yeah, come on board, I want to talk about digital addiction, I was like, you guys are the professional, what you could possibly want? And then I started to monitor myself. Like, if I take up my phone, I call it the idiot box. If I take this up before I come to work, there's no coming to work.
What?
I don't touch my phone until I get to work. I don't answer calls. I don't respond to messages. I don't touch it because it has the potential, if I go into social media land, to consume all my time. And I'm an adult. and I had to put measures in place to make sure that I am not distracted. So imagine a child who don't have a care in the world. That's all they want to do. But if they don't have other things to do, that is where the problem lies. Parents have to find other activities to inform them.
Balance
for them to play and do things with.
Yes, that's something that we mentioned. Parents are all about balance. We mentioned all about making sure that you prioritize your child's digital readiness. We talked about digital literacy and how to use the technology for positive development and not just as a prop for their digital happiness. Now, you are the parenting expert, and we talked about how especially for the early childhood aspect of development, we know that this is also something for the older children and the teens as well, and challenges there. What are some of the things that digital addiction, what are some of the ways that really hampers the family relationships that we have if we allow this to go unchecked?
The reality is it stops communication, because if you always have a device in your hand or you're distracted with device, it stops communication. And if there's no communication, there's no dynamic. You're just living your life day in and day out. So the addiction or the excessive use impact on social activities. It impact on conversations. It impact on time spent with family. And you will see families trying to spend time together, and each of them still have a device in their hand. So then there's still
both parents and children.
Yeah, exactly, both parents and children. So there's still no communication. You lost that connectivity, because the only thing you have in common is if you're playing Monopoly together and you're trying not to ruin each other's houses.
So let's go there. What are some of the things that parents can do to help their children, also help themselves, and build that family bonding in terms of counteracting digital addiction?
First, self-reflection. Identify if you too have a problem with your devices, and if you have to take a moment and put them down. That's the first thing. Children do a lot of what we do. Back in the day, the parents would say, do as I say and not as I do. But we always model our parents. So if you're on a device, how are you going to tell your child don't be on their device as well? Why is it so enhancing for you and not for them? So you have to find times to put things in place. Have a games night. Put on the phone at a certain time. Have family time. And it has to be consistent, because children want to interact. They want something to do. And the technology kind of regulates something for them to do, and it takes them away from any problems that they have. So now, instead of telling you about their problems, they're playing games or they're watching something.
Or sometimes they're telling the technology the problem.
There you go. And technology also impacts on self-esteem, because when we were growing up, we were only comparing ourselves to our siblings, older siblings, as it relates to academics and hair and skin color and everything. But now we are comparing ourselves to the Beyoncés and the Ciaras and the celebrities and the Blue Ivies of the world. Right. So now we are exposed to so much more, and we're not always plugging to know that our children are indeed impacted and affected.
All right, so we got some really insightful things that we can do. We talked about playing, having a games night, I think going outside, picnics, getting your children involved in other activities. You mentioned the parents also regulating themselves on the devices. And I think one of the things that you could do is not eat food together at the dinner table or at the breakfast table. Make sure that those devices are not there. In the article, it mentioned things like not having the devices in the bedroom. Interestingly enough, we have been going through to several primary schools, conducting our program there with the help of Massy Foundation, our EKCO program. And one of the things that is really alarming is that most of these children say they spend at least 12 hours or more on their device, and that they are up, honestly, 80% of the children say that they are up after 12 o'clock on their devices.
This is primary school.
Primary school. So it goes to show that we really, from a parenting standpoint, we are not monitoring. I mean, one young lady said they know their mother goes to sleep at 10 o'clock. So they wait till 10 o'clock, ensure she's asleep. Then she goes on the device. She knows that her mom gets up at 6. So at 5, whatever it is, she makes sure she goes back to sleep so that when her mom gets up, it looks like she's sleeping. All right. So these, as parents, we have to put in those monetary controls. We have to make sure that we prioritize their digital readiness, understanding how excessive screen time, and being on apps that they ought not to be on really impact them. One of the things we also looked at is the whole idea, you mentioned it, you alluded to it, is the aspect of their social skills. What students learn a lot from social media is the whole idea of social masking. In other words, I post an emoji, laugh out loud emoji or a short code, and really and truly I laugh. Or I send in tears and I really feel saddened by it, but I do it because I want you to feel a particular way. And then when they come into a real world environment, they do not know how to communicate now from that social standpoint. So I see a lot of richness in what you've said today. Now we had a webinar on Sunday evening. One of the questions that came out was, how does digital awareness relate to emotional intelligence and a neurodivergent child? Now I pose that question to you.
The thing about it is, emotional intelligence is about actually identifying how you feel and why you feel that way. And when children are hiding behind technology, that you rightfully say, they are learning to mask their emotions. And emotions are important because it helps us to identify our likes and dislikes, and how to also be able to find strategies to ensure that we are okay with who we are and what we do. So I think that it kind of, what it can do, it has the ability to impact on persons identifying their true emotions, and then in regards learning how to regulate their emotions. And that is so important, because if you don't know why you're feeling, how you're feeling, and why you're feeling what you're feeling, you can't regulate it. And it's so important for children to learn that through interactions, because technology is safe. If you don't like what you're watching, you can switch it to something else. But if you're having a discussion with a teacher and you don't like what she's saying, you can't switch she off. How do you respond?
Right.
What does your facial expression say? When a teacher is passionate about what she or he is saying to you, how do you receive that? Because you're not receiving it on a regular basis. So it has the potential to impact upon emotional intelligence and emotional regulations. And there are children who brains are wired differently. There are children who will go into the digital world and come out more in tune. Like, I saw this happen, and they're able to link it to their real life. But that is if their brain is indeed wired differently, and if they're still having interactions with humans, if parents are still able to guide them and say, what did you learn from that? How can you use it? Because if they're not interacting with people, it is just their input. How do you know that what they receive is what was meant to be received?
Look, you are saying so much truth right now. Just today, my wife and I were discussing the whole aspect of a lot of our children, even teens, a lot of our teens, they do not comprehend certain things, like when you respond in a disrespectful manner, or when you're being disrespectful to teachers or whatever. They see it as, well, I ain't do nothing, blah blah blah, but the way you say things, the way how you come over, and so on, your tone, all these things show a certain level of disrespect. But for them, they can't comprehend it because they mirror a lot of the activity or a lot of the interactions they see online, and many times it is disrespect in our culture, but is allowed in other cultures. I just want to say, so thank you so much for joining us here, Miss Terry Best-Thompson. I think you've shared a wealth of information, and all of you, if you're online, you can go ahead and also review this video on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ EKCO Nation. There's a lot of richness in what she shared. You can also connect with Parados. Parados every year do parenting seminars and sessions, and we are happy to be a partner with them in helping you to parent better. All right, and it's not only in terms of the digital world, but nutritional stuff, how to deal with conflict, and so many things. So I want to say thank you so much, Terry. God bless you, and we look forward to having you more on our EchoWise board.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have the STARCOM Network News. Stay locked on.
And I let my life be the first way that I express my love. I let my song be my life echo.
Join the movement to change the culture, change the future. Become a monetary partner with Echo Nation when you donate to our Scotiabank account number 456124. That's 456124. Checks can be written to capital EKCO Nation. Contact us at 254-3526, email echonation@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.echonation.com for more details. Echo Nation is registered charity number 1429 in Barbados. We thank you for your continued support.